Well, it's Saturday morning, March 27th, 2021 at Paris Natural Farms. And we have a few things to harvest yet. Our harvest days are Thursdays and Fridays. And then Saturdays we pack up and go to market, which is today. This is what we farm for. We get to go meet our customers, our vendors. And so we are burnt out usually by the end of the week. And then we get to come up or get to go to the market and meet our customers and our vendor family, and we get rejuvenated, and it reminds us a lot of why we're doing this. Obviously it's more than just selling food, but good food. But it gives us energy and fuel to continue to do what we love doing here. This right here is sunflower shoots. Again, we didn't get harvested yesterday because they needed an extra day of growth. So our farmers market, it's pretty I don't know, I think for a rural area, I'd consider this rural still, even though Paris is about 25,000 people. It's been gaining a lot of momentum. But I was chatting with Kit from up at the bakery, and he kind of was a pilgrim, so to speak, in his area, and I told him that's what I feel like we are. When we knew it when we came up here, because there was nobody really selling year round, nobody actually. And I joke often that we're bringing this hippie food right here, these microgreens, to a deep south culture, but it's actually been received quite well. With these microgreens, we get a lot of requests on what to do with them. So I think a lot of the people will buy these things kind of as an impulse, like, hey, it's something green and it looks healthy, and so I want to buy them, and which is good. We still encourage that. But most people will put these microgreens on their salads or sandwiches. We have been putting these things on just about everything. Certain microgreens pair well with other things. We hated, that might be a strong word, but we did not like the buckwheat at first. And now the buckwheat is like one of our favorite because it's so universal. We can put it on our eggs in the morning, we put it on our sandwiches, and then the sweet peas, of course, you can get those weighed out. These are great, like on turkey sandwiches and tuna sandwiches, and we have
little boys that want them for snacks and eat the whole bag.
Yeah, we do. We have one customer, a kid actually. He saves up his money, and he doesn't eat vegetables, but he eats these. And so his mom obviously encourages him to visit the market and to spend his allowance on microgreens. So you'll see people even just walking around the farmers market eating, yes ma'am, eating microgreens. So our process is we first cut the microgreens, throw them in the bowl there, and then we have these bags that come with their little twist ties, of course. We've got our little scale. We weigh our microgreens out at 2 ounces. Capture some air in there and give it a spin. And then the next greatest invention right there is that tape gun. Getting ready for the market hasn't always been this, I don't know, dare say organized and not as stressful. I remember last year, we started up at the farmers market in March of last year, which is when they had the mini market. All we had was plants, and so we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have a display. We didn't have any aesthetics in mind. We just showed up the first morning and decided to start slapping some plants. Oh, we had eggs. So we had spring plants for sale and eggs for sale, yeah. And everybody knew we were the new folks, that's for sure, because we just were very disorganized. And then it progressed from that to, working on table aesthetics. But the one thing that always gets us, my wife and I, we don't fight. We have discussions, we'll say. Saturday mornings have had us have a few discussions because of, she wants to get there an hour early to set up now because she's all about the aesthetics, and I'm all about let's get some sleep and sleep in and not have it, take up so much morning. But now we've kind of come to a happy medium where we get to the market most days.
It was pretty
on time.
I would literally leave in a different vehicle.
Yeah, for a while there we were driving separate vehicles because she literally would want to get there and get set up, and even though I'd have 90% of the produce and items, she would at least get there and get the tablecloth on.
Yep.
Yeah, if I had to do over again, I would, and we still want to do this because we haven't been to that many markets since we started, but if I had to do over again, I would go to some larger markets first off and get some ideas, just because, really our exposure to farmers market has really only been this one and a few other ones that we've visited prior. And we still want to do that. We want to go to Dallas and some of these other bigger markets just to glean from these people that have been doing this a long time. It's on our agenda this year to have an aesthetically or very appealing table, we should say, because it just draws. I remember last fall was the first time we actually had real color on our table. We had brought radishes. It was probably November. We brought radishes, and I set them on the table, and it was like I put dog food out, and the whole pound just came, because it was just that bright red. The way I had it set up with the black background, literally we had, and we were probably 20 minutes before we opened up, and Kathy wasn't there. I don't know where she was. I think we had kid activities that day, and I was like trying to call in Mayday, because I just saw all these people start flocking over. And that was like a turning point, because we realized aesthetics, it does a lot. If you've got kind of a messy, unorganized table and lack of color, it's not as appealing. There's still you have to appease the human curiosity mind, or the mind of your customers, and the colors and just the setup does all that. We have taken some tips from Jennifer's table, Hancock Hill, because, like you said, she has got a gorgeous setup, and she spends time on it. Some of these people get there an hour early just to work on their table, and Jennifer is definitely one of those people that you can tell she cares for her product and how it's displayed, and a lot goes into that, and others do too. Some people have, there's different strategies. We have, like Nikki's Nest, they do kind of a less is more, so their table isn't as cluttered as ours, because we have a lot of produce, so we're trying to display and get everything out there. And other people will display few items, but it looks really clean and neat. And then like Jennifer's from Hillcock Farm, Hancock Farms, from Hancock.
Hancock Hill.
From Hancock Hill. Yeah, Jennifer from Hancock Hill, her table has got that perfect balance. I think she can load up her table, and I don't think it could ever get look cluttered. So we're learning this. We just sat down with pen and paper about 3-4 nights ago and said, how do we want our table to look? Because we're still in the mini market, and so we're ramping up. In fact, I remember even last year, a couple months going in, like, what do we want that first day of the main market to look like? We had these grand plans of just, loads of tomatoes, and everything kind of fell apart because we weren't ready, because it was our first year. But we kept evolving throughout the year, iterating and improving, and this year it's no different. We're doing the same thing. So we're trying to figure out is what can we do to make our table, one, organized, because we have probably 5 times the amount of produce this year. Our first day at the market last year, we had our first customer that came up and asked if we take card, and we were like, no. But fortunately, Maggie there from the Quirky Bell Bake, she got our back, and she said she can run it through her company. And then we just she gave us cash for it. So the next week, actually probably 2 weeks thereafter, we we started taking credit card, and now this year we've got and then we started with just the little square reader that you put in your phone, which is what we still have. And then we would enter everything down on a little scratch pad paper, which is good. We could say, hey, chicken, eggs, just kind of do inventory that way. And then we started realizing we started getting busier and a little more demanding for our products that we were not able to keep up with writing stuff down. And so now on our, we use the square system. We just have an entry item for everything. So we can just, as soon as somebody comes up and says they want carrots, lettuce, radishes, we just hit the icon picture and it just logs it, and it takes away a lot of the areas that are prone to error. 2 years ago, we started doing plants just out of our house in Fort Worth, and we really got into that. We wanted to do this farming that we were doing. We started doing microgreens, but it was just more of experimental learning lessons. And then, so last year was our first year up at Farmers Market. We brought plants up there, and it was well received, but we realized that one, there's certain plants that just don't sell well up at the market, and there's certain plants that people will go to, the big box stores and get. And so this year, what we kind of gleaned from that, and we said, look, we're not going to mess around with some of these other varieties, and not only that, but we're just going to have them from April to May, because March was just, people are, you've got to be a pretty dedicated farmer or gardener to want to get your plants out when there's still a chance of frost and freezing. So. And plus our sales, the numbers just proved it. I mean, we didn't sell that many plants all of March. I mean, there were days that we spent hours preparing to get these plants in the truck, get them set up, and you sell 2 plants or something that day, and it was like, but yeah. And so we had early on in the season last year when we were selling the plants, we realized that it wasn't a big niche for us. But we did know that there was a pretty big niche for the produce. Cook's Farm, I still remember Harold, he said to me, he says, he's got a pretty thick accent. He says, boy, you ain't going to be able to grow enough. Meaning that everybody, and it didn't dawn on me what he was saying, because I think we had just started bringing some produce up there, and he realized, so it didn't dawn on me what we were, what he was saying. But then as the season progressed, we had all this produce, and by 9 o'clock, all our tomatoes were gone. It started dawning on me. It's like this is a really high demand out there that people want to buy, these produce, and so that really helped us double down, almost triple down on our process for growing food here, or for growing the produce instead of focusing so much on plants. Which is, again, that's what we wanted to do. But the plants are fun. We're doing the plants already, so. We bring them up, and this year we're just doing a lot of heirloom varieties and a lot of things you can't find in the big box stores. Yeah, a couple of the vendors really inspired us because we were like, what do you call those fish that cling to the sharks? Those. Yeah, so we were like the lampreys, that last year when we first showed up, because there was only like 4 or 5 tables at the farmers market in the mini market, what they call, and it was Booth's Brew and Cook's Farm and Maggie, and I think Jennifer was there. Oh, Liza's Coffee. And so we were, at the end of this, but the fact that people would come to, get their routine stuff from Booth's Brew and Cook's and Maggie and whatnot, they eventually made their way down. And so it was inspiring because we would show up and we would just see these lines behind these people's tables, and we thought that, one, it's good. I'm glad that we are, that they've accepted us into their kind of community, or circle, if you will. But also that inspired us, to do that. And now we're, it's cool because we get that. We love that rush at, 11 o'clock in the morning. It's like, there's nothing greater than, while we're setting up, it's even sometimes frustrating because we're setting up and, we don't have our tablecloth on, and people are, lining up, getting ready to, get their produce from us. And so it's kind of like a, it feels good because now we're contributing, and then we see other smaller, new vendors come in, and they do the same thing. They come up and they ask questions, and they get to, be inspired, and we try to encourage them too, because, we know what it's like being the new guy on the block, literally, Every week since we've started doing lettuces and produce kind of on the larger scale, for us at least, we've been learning. We want to get to a spot where we can just, we have these little boards up here that say the weights and what we've harvested, but we want to be a little more proactive where we say, this week we want, 5 pounds of leaf lettuce, 30 bunches of carrots, you know, whatever it is. And so right now it's a little more reactive. It's like, what do we have to harvest, because we're still in this startup mode and learning our demand. And like, for example, we have this leaf lettuce that we've been harvesting on all winter long, and we don't want to crop that out because we're waiting for the stuff out in the field to come up so we can crop that out. So we're literally every week right now, we're just harvesting enough to keep those plants healthy, to keep airflow moving through them and around. And so a lot of weeks we have leftovers, which we don't mind, because then we already have bagged lettuces for us, you know. But we do want to get to a spot where I can just tell Diane, just here we need, you know, 5 pounds of lettuce, 30 bunches of carrots, and whatever else, you know, 20 pounds of tomatoes this week we need. So we'll move from that reactive to proactive. Hopefully this year. That's the game plan, at least. One of our biggest upgrades this year has been this walk-in cooler behind me. I was just telling Kathy last night, you know, we've been doing all of this stuff. You know, we've been buying everything used, you know, our greenhouses, and it's a pain in the butt because you have to go tear the stuff down, you know, like these greenhouses. But last night it dawned on me, and I got the chills even when I think about it. Like, there's a story behind every one of these greenhouses. That one we're putting up there right now, that was actually confiscated. They grew marijuana in South Texas somewhere. They had just a whole bunch of them, gutter connect ones. And so there was a legal operation going on growing marijuana in those. This was a nursery down in Mount Pleasant that elderly couple, they eventually passed on. Their son just sold the nursery, so we got that. And then this cooler is from a bar up in Tulsa that they were leveling. You know, so, and I thought, you know, if we had just bought this farm and we looked at the front, we'd say, that door is crappy, like it's beat up. I mean, if you go up and take a shot of it, it's just completely beat up, and you can tell, but I know the reason why is because it was full of alcohol. It sat outside, and everybody was trying to bust in to get the booze out of it. So we've got a story behind this, you know, everything that's used. So it looks beat up to us, but we love it. So this has been one of our biggest upgrades on the farm. We had 3 refrigerators, one that's on the deck and 2 in the house, and they would be plump full every week. And then with produce, that is. And so we couldn't even have food for our own, 6 of us. We have a family of 6. But then the one on the porch this winter would get too cold at night, and we'd wake up on Saturday morning and find out all our produce was frozen, or a lot of it was frozen. So it got really frustrating. And so we went from managing all that to getting this walk-in cooler, and I would say it's got to be one of the top 3 best investments that we've had on the farm. I mean, it's phenomenal. And we don't have to have this thing run. We didn't want something this big, but every video I watched, they always said, go bigger, because you're going to grow out of it soon, you know. And so we were going to use the CoolBot system, but then we just stumbled upon this thing, and it was too hard to pass up, and it's great. In fact, they told us it was, I think, a third of the size of this, or a third less size. It's a lot smaller, and we got up there, and it barely fit on our 16-foot trailer, and we found out, it was a 6 by 12 or 14 or something. So, but it really is. It's a game changer. You know, we can just leave produce in there, and we just back the truck right up down Saturday mornings and load that thing up. Our favorite leaf variety so far has been this called Starfighter, and it has been so faithful to us, and it's grown, and it preserves, it keeps for, man, it's probably 2-3 weeks. We actually had one customer that bought some on Thanksgiving weekend, and sometime in early February told us that they just finished that bag. I don't know how you can hang on to a bag of lettuce that long, but anyways, it stayed for months. It's going to be a challenge this year. Our goal is to grow lettuce year-round. And so we've got some tricks that we're going to try this year. This is just one of those produce that we just absolutely love to eat and to grow. And so we're on a huge mission this year to grow lettuce year round, and I'm not extremely confident, honestly, because we're in zone 8A here in Texas, and we don't have the most polite summers, we could say. Yeah, you never know who's going to be up at the market that particular Saturday because of all the events and other things going on. You know, whether it's your normal customers that are coming up to see you to get their produce or plants or whatever, or product for the other vendors. But then there's all these other, and all of a sudden one Saturday or something, or a weekend, there's, you know, other events. Sometimes those events can help draw, you know, people in, because if there's events in town, then you have an influx. But at the same time, like if they're doing something up at the main square, all the vendors are down there at the market square, and so that'll detract and draw people away. So
not everybody that comes to market is really like food.
That's right. Yeah. Some people just go to the market just because of an experience, which is cool. I think our market is awesome for that. You know, to come down, and I mean, we hear about every week. We didn't know this was here, and it really is a neat experience, you know. And so in my mind, it's an event every week that people get to come partake of and participate in, and get out of the house. Especially like last year at COVID, I mean, people didn't want to go to the grocery store, so they were coming up. One, the food, you know, our food system kind of failed, so to speak. It didn't have, you know, right, we didn't have enough supply to meet the demand, and everybody kind of went berserko, and everybody took an interest, one, of not knowing. They thought their food might have been contaminated because, you know, people were touching it. They didn't know if their food was, literally a lot of people thought their food was getting shipped in from China, which there, you know, likely could be some of that. But and so we had a massive uptick in curiosity, at least, and in sales, I'd say, for knowing where their food was grown. And then also we had, that's also why I think our sale, that Labor Day was so big, was because everybody wanted to all of a sudden be, you know, start growing their own food, which is admirable, and they should at least learn how. But so yeah, it's interesting working with all the dynamics of society, the events in the city, family events that may take people out. Even for us, I mean, we have a daughter in gymnastics, competing gymnastics. And so we have to go next weekend. We have to go to Houston, and then that's for state. And then a month later, we got to go up to Colorado. And so now we have to figure out how, you know, to man the booth. And, you know, does one parent stay behind, you know, while the other one goes up to the market? You know, it's tough. And so we have to, you know, figure that stuff out and get our boundaries set. And fortunately, we have good kids. And they are very flexible and go along and know the greater good of what we're trying to achieve here too. But we definitely don't want them to ever feel like this is more important than them. So striking that balance of managing, you know, all the activities, our own family activities, and yet keeping a pulse on this, because every week we have to sell this stuff. I mean, if we don't, you know, our lettuce will just get unruly and crops will rot and things will go, you know, will spoil. So we have to be up there and every week selling. So it's a matter of finding the right people to step in that you can trust to take over for you, which we have wonderful workers. I gotta let some juice get to my brain.